Are you comfortable at working with a Tory government?
Our aim is to represent working people, whoever is in power. Now, for sure, we're more likely to share values with Ed Miliband than David Cameron, but it's important to me that we retain an open door, that we have constructive relationships, and that we have the opportunity to put our case. I feel disappointed that the government is taking a direction in economic and social policy that I don't think is good for the long-term future of this country. But it's important that we continue to make that case and keep trying to persuade the government to change course.
Yeah, and a time was when the TUC sent shivers down the spine of a Prime Minister or a Trade Secretary. Doesn't seem to happen that these days, does it? You know, covering conferences. I remember covering TUC conferences. This was big news.
Yeah, well, we could talk about news values. I think leading the biggest democratic movement of people in this country is, still pretty important for those in positions of power to listen to. Like I say, I think people sometimes forget that wealth is created by the workforce, not just in boardrooms. But I think the trade union movement still has a really important role to play, not just in the economy, but in wider society. It's important that working people have the right to a political voice. We still make a huge difference if you look at the pensions dispute in 2011, when millions of workers regrettably felt they were left with no option but to withdraw their labour. They won huge public support, and they won some important concessions from the government too. Clearly our aim is always to try and persuade people by the strength of our argument, but if necessary we have to do it through the strength of our organisation too.
Now, we saw last week a terrible situation in Scotland with Grangemouth, didn't we? And where the union there backed down. That seemed to be a complete U-turn by a union in that situation.
Well, I don't think anybody in the current climate of 2.5 million people unemployed, or real wage cuts ever since this government took power, and stagnating wages before then, would blame workers themselves, members of that union, for taking the decision that their priority was to keep the plant open.
But you seem a very calm, measured person. How can you control some of your colleagues who are perhaps rather wilder and more expansive in their